The Geneva diplomatic complex stood silent, its gleaming quantum glass walls reflecting the pale morning light. General Elena Rodriguez watched the holographic displays flicker with incoming data streams, her prosthetic left arm, a titanium and carbon fiber marvel of human engineering, resting casually on the conference table. She knew this day would come. For decades, humanity had prepared, not in fear, but in calculated readiness. The quantum communications network hummed beneath her fingertips, a silent testament to human innovation. Every major city, every colonial outpost, every research station was connected through a system so adaptive, so resilient that it made traditional communication networks look like primitive smoke signals. The massive holographic projection flickered to life. Krasnak, the Varkak's diplomatic emissary, towered over the human representatives. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, the alien's exoskeletal frame was a nightmare of armored plates and biomechanical augmentations. Its 4 eyes, each the size of a human fist, scanned the room with predatory calculation. Humans of Earth, Krasnak's translation matrix produced a sound that was part mechanical growl, part electronic whisper. The Varkak's Galactic Imperium has studied your species. Your technological development, while marginally impressive for a young civilization, is ultimately irrelevant. Your planet, your colonies, your entire species, are now property of the Imperium. Behind Elena, a holographic display showed the massive Varkak's fleet. Thousands of ships hung in Earth's orbit, their weapon systems charged and ready. Each vessel was larger than most human cities, bristling with weaponry that could vaporize continents with a single shot. But Elena didn't flinch. Her left arm, a constant reminder of humanity's previous conflicts, gleamed under the lights. The prosthetic wasn't just a replacement, it was a symbol. Developed after she lost her arm defending the Europa colony from an unexpected asteroid bombardment, it represented humanity's ability to adapt, to overcome, to transform weakness into strength. Krasnak continued, its voice dripping with condescension. You will surrender all military and technological resources. Your population will be categorized and assigned labor roles. Resistance is mathematically improbable. The Varkak's Imperium has conquered over 7,000 civilizations. You are merely the latest. A subtle movement caught Elena's eye. Dr. Aisha Khan, head of psychological warfare and xenolinguistics, gave her the briefest of nods. Their plan was already in motion. Elena stepped forward. The room fell silent. And then she laughed. It wasn't a nervous laugh, not a desperate laugh. It was a sound of pure, calculated defiance, a laugh that made the alien's translation matrix stutter and skip. You want war? Her voice cut through the tension like a quantum blade. Prepare for it. Krasnak's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture of confusion that translated across species. No civilization had ever responded to complete subjugation with anything but terror or immediate surrender. What the Varkaks didn't know was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for generations. Every city was a potential fortress. Every citizen was a potential soldier. The Adaptive Response Network, ARN, was more than a military strategy. It was a living, breathing organism of human innovation. Elena's laugh continued, a sound that would be replayed across countless communication channels, becoming a symbol of human resistance. Behind her, the holographic displays began to change. Quantum encryption keys activated, hidden defense platforms powered up. Colonial communication networks shifted into war mode, a system so complex and adaptive that traditional military doctrine became obsolete. The Varkaks had made a fundamental mistake. They saw humanity as a resource to be conquered. They were about to learn that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. Beneath the streets of New Shanghai, the first wave of the Varkaks invasion began. Lieutenant Maya Chen watched the holographic displays, her fingers dancing across quantum-responsive interfaces. The Adaptive Response Network, ARN, wasn't just a communication system. It was humanity's neural network, a living, breathing organism of collective resistance. Incoming Varkax ground assault. A synthetic voice announced. Sector 7 Gamma. Estimated troop deployment. 10,000 biomechanized infantry. Maya smiled. The aliens were about to learn the first lesson of human warfare. Nothing is ever as it seems. The Varkax dropships descended through Earth's atmosphere, their metallic hulls gleaming with advanced adaptive camouflage. Commanders were confident. This would be another quick subjugation, another civilization added to their millennia-long list of conquered worlds. What they didn't know was that every centimeter of ground had been prepared. In the underground control center, Maya activated Protocol Chimera. Thousands of kilometers of subterranean infrastructure came alive. Quantum-encrypted communication lines transformed into a weapon system more complex than any alien technology could comprehend. The first Varkax troops landed in what appeared to be an industrial district. Their advanced sensors detected minimal resistance, no significant technological defenses. Perfect landing zone. Perfection was about to become their nightmare. As the first wave of alien troops touched ground, the entire landscape began to change. Nanite-infused concrete shifted molecular structure. Buildings that seemed static moments before became dynamic defensive structures. Entire city blocks could now move, reconfigure, become impenetrable fortresses, or vanish completely. Maya's voice crackled through hidden communication channels. Activate urban camouflage. Initiate sensory disruption. Across the landing zone, reality itself seemed to warp. Varkax targeting systems went haywire. Holographic projections created false terrain, phantom enemy positions, impossible geometries that defied alien understanding. What should have been a straightforward invasion became a hellscape of uncertainty. Dr. Ravi Patel, head of ARN's Technological Warfare Division, watched from a secure location. They're using predictive combat algorithms, he murmured to Elena Rodriguez. Linear thinking against a completely non-linear threat. The Varkax ground troops found themselves fighting an impossible enemy. Communication networks collapsed. What seemed like 10,000 troops became a confused mass of conflicting signals and misdirected commands. Some units fired on their own positions. Others simply stood paralyzed as the very ground beneath them transformed. One Varkax commander's communication was intercepted and broadcast globally, a moment of pure, unadulterated confusion. The terrain. It's alive. The buildings move. Our targeting systems. They're useless. Where are the humans? Where are humans? Underground, Maya Chen allowed herself a grim smile. Humans weren't just defending. They were rewriting the very rules of warfare. The ARN was more than a network. It was a distributed intelligence, a collective human consciousness that could think, adapt, and fight in ways no single intelligence could comprehend. Every citizen was a potential node, every piece of infrastructure a potential weapon. Within hours, the Varkax's supposedly overwhelming invasion force was reduced to scattered, confused units. They had come expecting total victory. Instead, they found a nightmare of adaptive resistance. Elena Rodriguez's initial laugh during the diplomatic meeting now seemed prophetic. The Varkax wanted war. Humanity was more than prepared to give it to them, on terms the aliens could never understand. As the first wave of invasion collapsed, a message began to spread across human communication networks, a rallying cry that would define their resistance. We are not your prey. We are the architects of your defeat. Dr. Aisha Khan's fingers moved like lightning across the quantum communication interface. Each keystroke was a weapon more precise than any missile, each data packet a potential civilization-ending payload. The Varkax believed in absolute hierarchy. Their entire societal structure was a rigid, mathematically perfect pyramid of command and control. They had conquered thousands of civilizations by exploiting this precise, unbreakable chain of authority. Humanity would use that very rigidity to tear them apart. Target acquired, Aisha murmured. On her screen, a complex web of Varkax communication networks began to pulse with carefully crafted misinformation. In the highest echelons of the Varkax Imperium, communication was both a lifeline and a potential fatal weakness. Each transmission carried the weight of genetic and cultural lineage, a complex system of honor, rank, and absolute obedience that had maintained their galactic dominance for millennia. Aisha's team had spent months decoding the intricate linguistic and cultural nuances of Varkax communication. Every symbol, every tone, every subtle variation carried meaning far beyond simple words. Where humans saw communication as a tool, the Varkax saw it as a living, breathing extension of their societal DNA. The first strike was surgical. A meticulously crafted communication sequence was injected into the Varkax military network. It appeared to come from a high-ranking sector commander, complete with perfect encryption, matching communication protocols, and linguistically precise honorifics. The message suggested, subtly, almost imperceptibly, that a particular military unit had failed in its sacred duty. Not just failed, but had committed an unforgivable cultural transgression that would bring dishonor to its entire genetic lineage. In Varkax society, such an accusation was worse than death. Within hours, the targeted unit's leadership began to fragment. Senior commanders demanded investigations. Lower-ranking officers prepared elaborate defense protocols. The unit's internal communication became a tangled mess of accusation, counter-accusation, and defensive posturing. But this was just the beginning. Aisha watched as her team began to weave an increasingly complex narrative. False historical records were subtly introduced into Varkax historical archives. Communication channels were manipulated to suggest brewing rebellions in key sectors. Each piece of misinformation was crafted with such precision that it would withstand multiple layers of verification. "We're not just spreading lies," Aisha explained to Elena Rodriguez during a secured briefing. "We're exploiting their own system of truth. Every piece of disinformation is built using their own communication logic. It's like using a lockzone mechanism to pick it." The psychological warfare escalated. A high-ranking Varkax admiral received a series of communications that systematically suggested his entire lineage had been systematically dishonored over generations. The messages were so precise, so perfectly aligned with Varkax cultural communication, that they bypassed every defensive protocol. The result was spectacular and horrifying. In a public ceremony broadcast across multiple star systems, the admiral, consumed by the manufactured shame, committed ritual suicide. His final transmission was a heart-wrenching acknowledgement of his supposed familial disgrace. The Varkax military command descended into chaos. Each carefully crafted communication was a precision strike. Where traditional warfare used bullets and bombs, humanity weaponized information itself. The Varkax found themselves fighting an enemy that could rewrite their very understanding of reality. Elena Rodriguez watched the unfolding psychological warfare with a sense of grim satisfaction. Humanity wasn't just resisting. They were demonstrating a form of strategic thinking that transcended traditional military doctrine. As another falsified communication ripped through the Varkax communication networks, one thing became clear. In this war, information was the most dangerous weapon of all. The Quantum Adaptive Response Technology, QART, laboratory looked nothing like a typical research facility. Nestled deep beneath the Andes Mountains, it was a cathedral of human innovation, a place where the impossible was about to become reality. Dr. Aisha Khan and Dr. Ravi Patel stood before a holographic display that pulsed with impossible geometries. Surrounding them, a team of the most brilliant minds humanity had ever produced worked in perfect synchronization. "We're not just developing a technology," Dr. Patel said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We're rewriting the fundamental understanding of spatial-temporal interaction." The Varkax had superior weapons, superior numbers, superior technological infrastructure developed over millennia of galactic conquest. But they had one fatal weakness. They believed in absolute predictability. Humanity was about to prove them wrong. The QART prototype looked deceptively simple, a quantum processor no larger than a human hand. But within its crystalline structure lay a computational matrix that could manipulate probability itself. Where traditional technologies tried to predict and counter enemy movements, QART would make those movements fundamentally unpredictable. General Elena Rodriguez watched the final calibration sequence. Her prosthetic arm, itself a marvel of adaptive technology, interfaced directly with the QART system. Years of tactical experience had taught her that true innovation comes from challenging every existing assumption. Simulation Scenario Delta 9, Aisha announced. The holographic display transformed, showing a complex battle simulation of human and Varkax fleet interactions. Traditionally, such a scenario would show clear lines of engagement, predictable attack vectors, calculated risk assessments. But as the QART system activated, reality itself seemed to blur. Varkax ships became quantum ghosts. They existed simultaneously in multiple potential positions. Weapon tracking systems collapsed. Tactical algorithms became meaningless streams of impossible data. A ship could be detected in one moment, completely vanish in the next, then potentially re-emerge kilometers away, or not at all. It's not about hiding, Ravi explained to Elena. It's about existing in a state of fundamental uncertainty. We're weaponizing the quantum principle of superposition. The first real-world test would come sooner than anyone expected. A Varkax battle group had cornered a human colonial fleet near the Epsilon Eridani system. Outnumbered 5-1, the human ships would have been annihilated using conventional tactics. But as the QART system came online, everything changed. The human ships began to move in ways that defied classical physics. They didn't just dodge. They existed in multiple potential trajectories simultaneously. Varkax targeting systems received conflicting data. A ship could be simultaneously detected at its current position and potentially light years away. One captured Varkax communication transmission said it all. The humans, they are breaking the fundamental laws of spatial interaction. Our weapons target nothing. Our sensors detect everything and nothing. Entire Varkax squadrons found themselves firing at phantom targets, their most advanced tracking systems rendered completely useless. The battle became a surreal dance of quantum uncertainty. Elena Rodriguez allowed herself a rare smile. They wanted war, she said quietly. We're giving them a war that rewrites the very understanding of conflict. The QART breakthrough was more than a technological achievement. It was a fundamental reimagining of how a technologically inferior species could challenge a galactic empire. Humanity wasn't just fighting back. They were transforming the very nature of warfare itself. As the quantum-shifted human fleet emerged from the Epsilon Eridani engagement, not just intact, but having destroyed a significant Varkax battle group, a new era of conflict had begun. The Varkax had believed they understood everything. Humanity was about to prove them catastrophically wrong. The methane-rich moon of Tartarus Prime was never meant to be a battlefield. 12 kilometers beneath the toxic surface, Commander David Rodriguez, Elena's younger brother, watched the Varkax invasion force approach. This wasn't just a human colony. It was a living, breathing weapon waiting to be unleashed. Atmospheric generators to standby, he whispered into his quantum-encrypted comlink. Terrain modification sequence initiated. The Varkax believed they understood hostile environments. They had conquered thousands of worlds, adapted to conditions that would kill most species. But they had never encountered human innovation. Tartarus Prime looked like a dead world to conventional sensors. Methane storms raged across its surface. Temperatures fluctuated between -120 and -180 degrees Celsius. No conventional military force could survive here. The Varkax landing force consisted of 10,000 biomechanically enhanced infantry, supported by massive walker units that could crush mountains. Their advanced environmental suits could withstand conditions that would instantly kill most biological entities. They had no idea what was coming. As the first wave of Varkax troops began their descent, the entire lunar environment began to transform. Nanite-infused ground particles began to reconfigure. What appeared to be solid rock became a dynamic, responsive terrain that could shift, move, and react with living intelligence. The first Varkax walker units touched down. Massive mechanical legs designed to crush any resistance sank unexpectedly into ground that was no longer stable. Terrain that looked solid suddenly became liquid-like, then transformed again into a crystalline structure that conducted massive electrical charges. Atmospheric manipulation in 3, David counted down. 2, 1. The methane atmosphere became a weapon. Electromagnetic pulse generators hidden throughout the lunar surface created impossible wind patterns. Sound waves were weaponized, turned into physical force that could shatter advanced alien exo-armor. The very atmosphere became a living, breathing defensive system. Varkax troops found their advanced communication systems jammed by frequencies that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Their walker units, technological marvels that had crushed civilizations, became massive, immobilized targets. One Varkax commander's transmission was intercepted. The environment is attacking us. This is not possible. This is not possible. But it was possible, because humans had turned an entire moon into a weapon. The colony wasn't just a human settlement. It was a massive, adaptive defense system. Every cubic meter of terrain could be reconfigured. Methane could be instantly transformed from a toxic atmosphere into a complex chemical weapon. Electromagnetic fields could be manipulated to create localized gravity disruptions. David Rodriguez watched the battle unfold with a clinical precision. This wasn't just defense. This was total environmental warfare. Varkax troops that survived the initial assault found themselves fighting an enemy that was literally everywhere and nowhere. Holographic projections created phantom human defenders. Terrain could become a weapon, a shield, or simply vanish. By the battle's end, the 10,000-strong Varkax invasion force was reduced to less than 200 survivors. Not through conventional combat, but through a total transformation of the battlefield itself. As the last Varkax units were systematically eliminated, David's comlink crackled to life. It was his sister, General Elena Rodriguez. "Impressive work," she said, the hint of a smile in her voice. "They wanted war on our terms. We're giving it to them." Tartarus Prime became a legend. Not just a battle, but a statement. Humanity would fight. Humanity would adapt. And humanity would transform any environment into a weapon of total resistance. The Varkax had believed they understood warfare. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The Varkax Central Command Nexus hung like a massive obsidian crystal in the heart of their most secure star system. For millennia, it had been the unbreakable core of their galactic dominion. A communication and control center so advanced that no civilization had ever even conceived of challenging it. General Elena Rodriguez studied the holographic display, her prosthetic arm interfacing directly with the adaptive response network's most sophisticated systems. This wouldn't be a conventional attack. This would be a surgical deconstruction of an entire civilization. Initiating Protocol Ouroboros, Dr. Aisha Khan's voice was calm, almost clinical. The name was deliberate, a reference to the ancient symbol of a serpent eating its own tail. They would use the Varkax's own systems to destroy themselves. Years of psychological warfare, technological infiltration, and strategic preparation had led to this moment. The human resistance had become something far more than a military force. They were a distributed intelligence, a collective consciousness that could think, adapt, and strike in ways no single intelligence could comprehend. The attack began not with weapons, but with information. Carefully crafted communication sequences began to penetrate the Varkax Central Command Nexus. These weren't simple hacking attempts. They were quantum-encrypted payload packages that would rewrite the very fundamental communication protocols of the Varkax civilization. Each data packet was a weapon more precise than any missile. They carried complex memetic payloads that would trigger cascading systemic failures within the Varkax hierarchical structure. The first signs of breakdown were subtle. Communication channels between high-ranking Varkax commanders began to fracture. False historical records, meticulously crafted to exploit the deepest cultural vulnerabilities, suggested widespread systemic betrayals. Genetic lineage records, the most sacred element of Varkax society, were subtly manipulated to create doubt and internal conflict. One by one, military units began to turn on each other. The rigid hierarchy that had been the Varkax's greatest strength became their fatal weakness. They built a civilization on absolute control, Ravi Patil explained to Elena. We're using that very structure to tear them apart. The central command nexus began to experience impossible system failures. Communication networks collapsed. Military deployment systems began issuing contradictory orders. The most sophisticated AI systems in the galaxy found themselves fighting against their own protocols. A captured communication transmission revealed the growing panic. Critical system, FAI Lior. Communication Puerto Cols Com Rom. Mais. G Nidik Iliani AG Verification Soestims. Offline. The Varkax had conquered thousands of civilizations by exploiting their absolute belief in hierarchy and control. Humanity was now using those exact same principles to destroy them. Military units received orders to attack their own command structures. Defensive systems were turned against their creators. The most secure communication networks became channels of total destruction. Elena Rodriguez watched the systematic collapse with a sense of calculated precision. This wasn't just a military victory. This was a fundamental reimagining of how a civilization could be defeated. By the operation's end, the Varkax Central Command Nexus, once considered the most secure installation in the known galaxy, was nothing more than a floating graveyard of shattered systems and broken communication lines. The Varkax Imperium didn't fall to conventional weapons. It collapsed from within, destroyed by its own rigid structure and humanity's unprecedented ability to understand and exploit that structure. As the last communication systems went dark, Elena's final transmission to the human resistance was simple and definitive. The Imperium is broken. Humanity rises. The galaxy would never be the same. The Planetary Reconstruction Summit looked nothing like traditional diplomatic gatherings. Held on a massive space station constructed from the remnants of Varkax and human technology, it represented something entirely new, a galactic reset button. General Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of a holographic chamber where representatives from over 127 alien civilizations watched with a mixture of fear, curiosity, and hope. Some had been conquered by the Varkax. Others had watched from the sidelines. All of them understood that everything was about to change. We're not here to establish an empire, Elena began, her voice cutting through multiple translation matrices. We're here to create a new framework of mutual understanding. The station itself was a testament to human innovation. Its very structure was adaptive, capable of reconfiguring its internal spaces to accommodate different physiological needs. Chambers could transform to match the atmospheric, gravitational, and environmental requirements of each species. Dr. Aisha Khan had spent months developing the communication protocols. This wasn't just translation. It was a complete reimagining of interspecies dialogue. Each representative had a quantum communication device that could not just translate words, but interpret cultural nuances, emotional subtext, and contextual meanings. The first shock came when humanity proposed something unprecedented. A cooperative galactic governance model where no single species would have absolute control. The Varkax failed because they believed in absolute hierarchy, Elena explained. We propose a network, a living, adaptive system where each species contributes and benefits. The technological exchanges were even more revolutionary. Humanity didn't hoard its advancements. Instead, they created open-source technological platforms that any species could adapt and modify. The quantum adaptive response technology that had been humanity's secret weapon was now being offered as a collaborative development project. Representatives from the silicon-based Krex civilization were particularly intrigued. Their lead diplomat, a crystalline entity that communicated through complex light patterns, was stunned by the human approach. "You defeated us," the Krex representative's translation matrix produced, "and now you offer collaboration." Alina's response was simple. "Conflict is a failure of imagination. Cooperation is our true strength." The station's adaptive technologies became a metaphor for the new galactic order. Spaces that once would have been impossible for different species to share now transformed seamlessly. A methane-breathing species could occupy a chamber while oxygen-breathing entities worked in an adjacent space, with the environmental barriers shifting in real time. Technological platforms were developed that could be simultaneously used by carbon-based, silicon-based, and energy-based life forms. Communication networks were redesigned to be truly universal, breaking down the barriers that had previously isolated different civilizations. Most revolutionary was the proposed research initiative. Instead of competitive scientific development, species would now collaborate on solving fundamental challenges: stellar engineering, quantum communication, adaptive biotechnology. All would become collective endeavors. The Varkax remnants, those who survived the collapse, were offered a unique proposition: not punishment, but rehabilitation. A chance to become part of this new collaborative framework. Dr. Ravi Patil unveiled the most ambitious project, the Galactic Reconstruction Network, GRN. It was more than a governance model. It was a living, adaptive system that could evolve with the needs of its constituent species. "We're not creating an alliance," Ravi explained. "We're creating an organism, a galactic-scale system of mutual understanding and collective growth." By the summit's end, something extraordinary had happened. Species that had been enemies for millennia were discussing collaborative research. Civilizations that had never communicated were sharing technological insights. Humanity had done more than defeat the Varkax. They had reimagined the very concept of galactic civilization. As the first collaborative agreements were signed, Alina Rodriguez allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. They had gone to war to survive. They were now creating something far more important, a future where survival was no longer the goal, but collective advancement was. 200 years after the fall of the Varkax Imperium, the Galactic Archives on New Terra became a pilgrimage site for every intelligent species in the known universe. Dr. Kalin Sartok, a renowned xenohistorian from the crystalline Krex civilization, carefully examined the holographic displays. Her multifaceted crystalline form refracted light in complex patterns, a visual representation of her deep concentration. The human story was unlike anything in galactic records. Humanity wasn't just a species that had survived. They had fundamentally transformed the understanding of existence itself. The archives contained more than historical records. They were a testament to a revolutionary approach to life, conflict, and collective advancement. Early records showed a species that had been minutes away from total extinction. The Varkax invasion had been designed to be absolute, total, and irrevocable. No civilization had ever survived such a comprehensive assault. But humans had done more than survive. They had turned impossibility into opportunity. The quantum archives revealed layers of complexity that still challenged comprehension. How had a relatively young species developed technologies that rewrote fundamental understanding of physics, communication, and collective intelligence? Dr. Sartok's research focused on what historians now call the adaptive cognition principle, a uniquely human approach to problem-solving that transcended traditional technological and biological limitations. It wasn't just about technological innovation. It was about a fundamental way of thinking. The personal records of General Alina Rodriguez became a cornerstone of galactic philosophical study. Her strategic approach wasn't just military. It was a comprehensive reimagining of how intelligence could interact with challenges. One archived communication captured the essence of human philosophy. Our strength is not in our weapons. Our strength is in our ability to transform, to adapt, to see possibility where others see limitation. The Galactic Reconstruction Network, initially created by humans, had evolved into something far beyond its original conception. It was a living system of collective intelligence that continued to grow. adapt, and transform. Different species had contributed their unique perspectives. The energy-based luminarians brought quantum communication advances. The silicon-based Kreks contributed adaptive material sciences. The methane-breathing Kithar offered revolutionary ecological engineering techniques. But the foundational principles remained distinctly human, an approach that valued collective growth over individual dominance. Technological museums across the galaxy showcased human innovations. The quantum adaptive response technology had evolved into communication and transportation systems that allowed instantaneous travel and communication across previously unimaginable distances. But the most profound legacy wasn't technological. It was philosophical. Humanity had introduced a radical concept, that diversity was not a weakness to be conquered, but a strength to be cultivated. That cooperation was more powerful than competition. That the most advanced form of intelligence was the ability to understand, adapt, and grow. Dr. Tartak's research revealed a startling statistic. Of the thousands of civilizations the Varkaks had conquered, humanity was the only one that had not only survived but fundamentally transformed the galactic paradigm. The final entry in Elena Rodriguez's personal archives captured this spirit perfectly. We did not fight to conquer. We fought to create. We did not seek to destroy. We sought to understand. Our greatest weapon was never our technology. It was our capacity to imagine a different way of existing. As galactic historians continued to study the human legacy, one thing became increasingly clear. Humanity's true victory was not in defeating the Varkaks, but in reimagining what was possible. They had gone to war to survive. They had emerged having redefined the very nature of existence.